Hello, everybody. I am exhausted, and so this is going to be brief and short. Instead of going live, I'm using StreamYard so that I can screen show to you guys. So real quick, I'm going to pull up my phone and even see if this is working. Going to the group. Let's see. Okay. Anybody on Facebook watching want to tell me if this is working? Okay, looks like I am. Okay, so there's been a lot of discussion back and forth from everybody. And Virginia is so lost in education policy, period, that it boggles my mind. And one, I want to address the fact that school boards, we have to accept the fact that, and I made this mistake for an entire year, assuming that they actually have any clue what they're doing, throw that out the window. Because they take their oath of office, I will not violate the Virginia Constitution or the United States Constitution, so help me God. But they violate the United States Constitution and the Virginia Constitution every single day. This is why every school board, politics or not, should pull out of the VSBA, because they have not educated them on what their actual roles and responsibilities are, because they're the elected officials. A school board official today, or a school board member, said, it's my belief that it's up to the teachers to decide what they're going to teach, which blew my freaking mind. I'll just say that. I was like, I'm sorry. So that's the problem right there. We have Rogue Nation. We have school board members who think that, like in Chesterfield, 65 schools have 65 principals and 65 squads of teachers who just teach what they want. So if you're on a school board and you haven't been properly educated by, I don't know, the school board association as to what your job, your roles and responsibilities are, then yeah, we have a major problem. And it was right there in that comment. And this is somebody that I respect and like. But guys, if you're on a school board or running for school board and you've never read the Code of Virginia and the Constitution of Virginia on powers and duties, roles and responsibilities, much less then go to the Board of Education and read how the process works, because the process does not work like this. You do not elect a school board and then have them hand all authority over to a superintendent. That's not the way it works. We didn't elect a superintendent. We elected a school board. And it sucks because you have to go through board docs. You have to read because they will write you out and put in the school board attorney. But I'm sorry, Virginia Constitution is not how policy is developed. So I just wanted to show, again, brief, and I don't do brief well, but I'm exhausted. This comprehensive sex ed stuff is blowing my mind. But I wanted to show you guys really quick. Okay. Why am I double myself? Okay, I'm gonna remove myself, the double, because that's just weird. Okay, so just really quickly, so we understand, let's see which one I'm pulling up. Okay, so pull up Youngkin's Standards of Learning. This is the way standards work, guys. Standards are a guidance. So for months we've been fighting over standards. Guys, standards are not the rule of law. They're standards. They're guidelines. They do nothing but, because then what happens? The school board, each individual division, this is where your local control comes in, and there's law on involving the community in how this curriculum is developed. But we've gotten so lazy because technology is dumping or signing 50 web app contracts and then just dumping those to teachers, and that's when you get the free for all. You know, I'm working with a couple of great school boards, small school boards across the state that are completely redoing. They're actually doing what the law says, and they're not just dumping stuff at the teacher. Here's the standards. You got to take the SOLs. So we're not going to give you anything but a whole bunch of ed tech software, and occasionally drop some extremely inappropriate lessons, like that drug lesson they gave my to come search my house, but my 11-year-old dumped in to the curriculum. That's what they consider. No. I have a teacher, I have a sister that teaches in this county, and she kept saying, and we don't have curriculum. They don't give us curriculum. So when you hear people like Jennifer McClellan on this new mental health curriculum bill, it's not even written correctly because the VDOE doesn't write curriculum. Period. So that in itself is the fallacy. But so you can pull up any of the standards of learning. And if you have not read the health standards of learning, if you have not read the family life standards of learning, if you have not read the social emotional learning standards of learning, you need to go, it's not hard, it's just Google VDOE history standards of learning. And so just, and it'll blow your mind, and not in a good way. So where's the one I wanted to pull up? Okay, so the 2008 standards of learning. Let's see. So starting in 95, they started, that would be when Common Core standards of learning started here. All right. The history and social science standards of learning are not intended to encompass the entire curriculum for given grade level course, nor to prescribe how the content should be taught. It is understood that these academic standards are to be incorporated into a broader, locally designed curriculum. Okay? So we're having hissy fits over standards of learning. But guys, the power is in the people. It's ours. The local control. It does say a bunch of teachers are encouraged to go beyond the standards and select instructional strategies and assessment methods appropriate for students. Blah, blah, blah. So that would be from 2008. And then, let's see, where Governor Gunkin, I mean, this was the most recent one. Let me find where I wanted to read you guys. Okay. So he says, curriculum, on the other hand, created at the division or local level should prescribe a specific sequence of coherent modules that combine instructional strategies with resources and sequence of students' activities to help students meet the standards. So the division develops the curriculum from the standards. Okay, so they give you frameworks, they give you standards, the localities develop the curriculum. That includes what type of social emotional learning you want to teach. It doesn't have to be CASEL, and that means it doesn't have to be all 68 that align with CASEL. You don't have to use CASEL. So that's some examples. And then social emotional learning, God bless my soul. So this, again, these are standards of learning. Because they give you the CASEL definition, and Virginia adopted a definition based off of CASEL, does not mean you have to use CASEL or any of the 60 to 70 that align with CASEL, because you can move from second step to collaborative classroom, because second step has been removed, if your county doesn't know that, from the VDOE approved list. But you've still got CASEL because they're all aligned. But there's others out there. I'm working with other school divisions removing transformative SEL altogether. I don't think it should be taught at all, but until that law goes away, this is what we're stuck with. So, um, so they created a definition, which is what the law stated. The law stated to create a definition. They did. They used castle. Um, but nowhere in there does it say must be castle, has to be castle, it must be castle, etc. These are just standards. Then you give the power to the division, which is why all of my legislation on education transparency got denied, because they don't want you to know this. The most disturbing is the health standards of learning. Okay, from 2020. The health standards of learning, this is the zinger, is, tell me why the health standards of learning, where is it? Have castle. The purpose of health education is to develop health literate students who acquire an understanding of health concept and skills to make healthy decisions to improve, sustain, and promote personal, family, and community health. Okay, so we're not talking about CPR. Basic. I mean, we all took. I'm a product of Chesterfield County Public Education, and so I don't want to see any more castle. God bless it. These skills align with core competencies of castle. So now you've got SEL, which is systemic, embedded in every single classroom. You can go to profile a graduate, and it'll tell you right there. Now you've got health education, that is social emotional learning. And now you've got comprehensive sex ed, okay, the new topic. How is that getting in without family life? Because they're not using family life, they're using castle. Social emotional learning, family life has to have the notification, the full availability of parents to view all curriculum for family life. Okay, they have filtered it because it is the injection. You put all of your critical theories, gender, race, every critical theory, not just, I mean, I'm not even saying the word CRT. You put that, you put every single thing that you can imagine into SEL, and it's the syringe in the arm of the child. It's the delivery system for all of this. That's why it's the glue that holds the political parties together, because they're both getting what they want. That's why neither of them are fighting, and nobody's talking about SEL. Okay. Sorry to offend the Republicans, but we are a part of this too. And until everybody acknowledges that, our children be damned. And if this is where I get really passionate, is that if you are still clinging on to the hope that somebody's going to come in and save our children, 15 months in, they're not coming. He's not coming. So the standards of learning, okay, please read them. But again, they are standards left to the division to develop the curriculum. School boards are lazy. Sorry. They have, curriculum development teams. They have all these teams that they promulgate authority to. Or, like Chesterfield, they just jump in, never question what Carrie Coyner, Javid Siddiqui, or James Lane did, and then took me a year to get them to request to see the curriculum, to see second step, SEL. They didn't even... If you don't know what's being taught and you're on a school board, sorry about your luck, but the constitutional authority falls on you to know what's being taught. You can sit at the dais, and when I say you did this, and you can snicker at me all you want, snicker all you want, but because I understand that you have because you were elected and all these people work under you. So yeah, running for school board is a big deal. You take a lot onto your plate. But that does not mean that you get to say, it's not my fault, I didn't know it was in the library. It's not my fault, I didn't know that it had been implemented. Yes, it is your fault. And that's what everybody should pull out of the VSBA. What are you learning besides how to destroy our children and lie to parents? Nothing. Um, so that, just reviewing real quick, um, how important it is to understand, sorry, um, so the Board of Education, is, it shall have the authority to approve textbooks, and under the definition of textbooks is instructional materials. The definition of instructional materials is any education software. So just to clarify, when they say textbooks, it does include education software. And aids and materials for use in courses. It shall have the authority to approve. It does not have to approve instructional aids and materials in use for courses in public schools in the Commonwealth. But more importantly, let's see, where do I want to go? Oh, back to education. I think. Maybe. No. I wanted to go to the Code of Virginia. If you have never read Code of Virginia 22.1, I suggest you read the entire thing. But so all of the legislation, the transparency in education, that they didn't want to acknowledge because it's one document of every law they're not following, I didn't need it to pass. I just wanted attention brought to it of how much law they are not following. So that would take us to, school board, nope. General powers and duties. General powers and duties. Where's the... Lots of BS in here. Where am I looking for? Okay, maybe that's not what I'm doing. I'm looking for textbooks. Anyway, as soon as I find it, I will let you know because I've got it on my phone. Where's my phone? So to clarify, maybe it might be easier if I pulled up my entire legislation. Hold on, I do want to show you something real quick, if I can find it. Anyway, okay, let me look it up. I have everything on my phone. I'm not used to using my computer, so I apologize. Let's... Oh, I don't need to look up. Hang on, real quick. 22.187. 22.1. Yeah. 22.1. Where did you go? Let's do this. I'm looking for 238. Sorry. Yes, and I have all this at my fingertips. So when you guys ask me for stuff, it's right there. Okay, approval of textbooks. This was part of Virginia, the education transparency, that conveniently on all of the every article ever printed across the nation about Virginia's education bill, like laws like going into General Assembly right now, all of them were left out. Why? Nobody, even the mainstream media, didn't want to bring attention to the law. So this one, approval of textbooks, was part of that law. Um, the Board of Education. Okay, any school board may use textbooks. No, that's not what I want. Okay, so here, for the purposes of this chapter, the term textbooks means print or electronic media for student use that serve as primary curriculum base for grade level subject or course. So just to clarify, textbooks is because a lot of people have asked me about that. Well, we don't use textbooks anymore. Well, I'm fully aware of that. Um, but the definition of textbooks is what we need. Okay, let's see. Instructional materials. This is the one that's really important. This one was great too. So let me see. Oh, and I wanted to show you guys real quick. Subjects taught in elementary grades. In elementary grades, every public school, the following subjects shall be taught: spelling, reading, writing, arithmetic, grammar, geography, health, physical ed, drawing, civil government, and history of the United States. Okay, it does not have social emotional learning in there. Nope. So if you're on a school board and you're doing SEL K through 5, I haven't gone to middle school yet, but I'm just telling you, you don't have to do it. Right here. Subjects taught in elementary school. Period. That would be Code of Virginia, Education, Chapter 13, Programs, Course Instruction Material, Programs, Course Instructional General. Elementary school. This is really the one that's blown my mind, is that they have limited recess. Blown my mind that they limited resource, but that's a different. And then let's see. Okay, so I would go through here and read all of this. So okay, I really need to not be on here all night because I'm gonna do this tomorrow with you guys. I'm gonna go through the entire all of this, including comprehensive sex ed, but that was just not my mission today. Let me, ooh, there it is. As you can tell, sorry. Hold on. Wait. Bear with me. It's been a long day. Love textbooks. Nope. All right. So anyway, there's an entire code in there that talks about how textbooks should be adopted. And so textbooks are instructional materials. Okay. There's an entire process. I'm just going to pull up the law that I wrote, or the bill, and send it to myself because that way I have all the codes. And if you guys have not read it, I encourage you. Because so things like the really controversial bill that John McGuire, because Nick Freitas had the whole thing, and then he dispersed it amongst multiple delegates, whereas Bryce Reeves and Amanda Chase carried it as one document. And we are still, the Hashmi agreed that we would have an investigation into school boards as the VSBA and the Counselor Association, and the VEA claimed that they are following all the law of Virginia. So that we will deal with on a different day. But let me open up the legislation that I wrote. Again, we don't need this because it is already law. All of it is already law with a tiny bit of federal law. So the problem is this. The problem is that they're not following it. They don't care. They're not listening. You ask them, why aren't you following this law? And they look at you like, because who's going to make us? I mean, literally, that's where we are. Who's going to make us? Are you going to make us? Nope. The governor's not going to make us. Oh, you know what the answer they tell us? Elections. That's how you change this. So when school boards don't follow the law, they take an oath of office. And the answer is elect somebody new. Is that okay with you? That's not okay with me. Oh, you're completely screwing my kids. You're not following the law. You're not giving opt-outs. You're not doing any of this. But your answer is to elect somebody new for 4 years from now, 3 years from now, 2 years from now, because that's where we are. That's not the way that it works. And that's why understanding the difference between a constitutional republic and a constitutional democracy is extremely important. They are not the same thing. So I'm going to, again, going to go back here real quick. So again, we've established standards are standards. They are like Governor Youngkin's, I'm going to ban CRT, but I'm not really, I'm just going to issue a guidance. Okay, same thing. Standards are like a framework on sand with the ocean coming in. And then the locality develops the curriculum. Okay, read the standards of learning. Your mind will be blown if you were to do that. I cannot sit here and read them to all of you because they're out there. I think they're probably all mostly on our website. So I'm almost done, I promise. Where did I put this under? I think under... Bear with me. Sorry. Oh, Christ, here it is. Nope. Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Did I freeze? All right, I'm back. Sorry. Now I'm lagging. Oh, that's why. I think I'm better. Okay. I don't know. That's really weird. So this is the legislation, just so you guys can see it. It was carried by the Senate and the House in different forms. So it goes through, for the purpose of this chapter, the term textbooks means print or electronic media as defined in 22.1-238. These rights to education transparency are as follows. Everything in red is already coded. Fully review and make copies of curriculum, books, and other educational materials by the school. Procedures for selection of instructional materials defined by textbook. This is the procedure to develop the curriculum. Appoint an evaluation committee by the local school board to review and evaluate textbooks, instructional materials in each subject area. Notice to parents that instructional materials under consideration for approval will be listed on the school division's website and made available at designated locations for review by any interested citizen. This is still law today. Opportunities for those reviewing such instructional materials to present their comments and observations, if any, to the local school board through locally approved procedures. Still, again, Virginia law on the books. No school board is doing this. That's why you have no idea what's being taught to your kids. But guess what? There's law on the books. Nobody's doing it. Opportunities for those reviewing such textbooks to present their comments and observations. Procedures to ensure appropriate consideration of citizen comments and observations. This is all curriculum development, guys. Selection criteria. School board policy is developed considering the views of teachers, parents, and other concerned citizens, in case you didn't know. So this is all, and I'm not even going to get into the amount of counseling, because there's a code here that says no student shall be required to participate in any counseling program to which a student's parent object. 8 VAC 20.620.10. Your kids are getting counseling, whether it's through SEL or a button that they click on their Chromebook that says, I'd like to meet with the counselor. Boop! You have no idea that your kids are getting counseling without you knowing. Guess what? Law in the books. Nobody's following it. Access to education records. Yeah, get that denied all the time. I hear about it. Sorry, guys, that's federal law. No questionnaire or survey requesting the students provide sexual information shall be administered to any kindergarten through 6. That's standing law. Guys, survey, when they changed the rules and got rid of textbooks, do you know what the definition of a survey is? Anything that collects data. That's why they don't want to follow the law at all, is because everything collects data, and there's no way that they can give notification to parents on every single assignment because we have no textbooks. That's why they don't want to follow the law, because we need technology for the 4th Industrial Revolution. Each school board must have clear and transparent policies and procedures for the selection and evaluation of all instructional materials purchased by the school division, including review of all instructional materials contracted through publishers and educational technology companies. That's still standing Virginia law. Opt-in provisions, still waiting on Jason Miyares to actually put the Virginia Consumer Data Protection Act, which went into effect on January 1st this past year, which is opt-in for things like biometric data. Guys, the ed tech companies have been aware of this since Northam. They're ready for it. Miyares just isn't doing it. And until, even though the school boards know it's there, until the Miyares says they have to do it. But effective date is January 1st. Enforcement date is July 1st. So I TikToked and wait for January 1st to come around. He didn't do anything. When July 1st comes around, no. The protection of our children, and unfortunately, until they change COPA, under 30, you can opt your child out of all data collection. And this is an opt-in provision. This is not an opt-out. This does not mean you have to know to opt your kid out. You have to opt your kid in if you want them to collect your child's data. But here we sit. But who's the problem? The red wave? Sorry. So this is the entire law. Do you know school boards, instead of doing opt-out, if you were a good, decent school board and you were proud of what you were doing and teaching, and you thought social emotional learning was so wonderful and your curriculum was so wonderful, there's a provision called that you can opt in. Those of you running for school board, you can notify parents of opting in versus hiding it and then expecting them to know to opt out. So this went way beyond standards of learning. But so I'm going to get into the comprehensive sex ed stuff tomorrow because it is so far beyond disturbing. Guys, I want you to imagine 11-year-olds in front of a classroom talking about, it's called role playing. Role playing consent. Consent to sex. In such an inappropriate manner that it eroticizes. I mean, there's no other word to say it. Guys, and just because it's in Norfolk, people are like, oh, well, it's in Norfolk, it's not here. If you haven't picked up on it yet, just like the people that said, well, we didn't adopt transgender, the model policy, and then came to later find out what? You had it anyway. So because the teacher that sent it to me is from Norfolk, doesn't mean, oh, it's just in Norfolk, because it's been up in the Northern Virginia area for a long time, I just don't think that until people actually see what I'm going to show them that they actually understood what comprehensive sex education is. And that's going to bring me to my last point. Hold on one second. Where are you? Last point. I'm going to show you SECUS. I don't know if you guys know what SECUS is. It's on that, it's like Glisten. It's one of these like abhorrent sex ed at all ages, Alfred Kinsey type mind-boggling institute. But anyway, when they tell you exactly, because they're mad, they don't like Virginia's sex ed laws. They think that they're horrific, and we're terrible people for not providing it at all ages to all people. But you know where I get the majority of my information from is from the left, the loony left, as I call them. So you can look up SECUS. Nope. You can look up SECUS and understand. So it's sex ed for social change is what that stands for. They will break down the Virginia State profile. But right here, I don't know if I can zoom in. Probably not. It says, since Virginia schools are not required to provide sex education to students, schools are left to decide what type of sex education, if any at all, they teach young people. Mandating local control over sex education presents unique challenge. And then they go into their, oh, well, mandating local control is terrible because it's going to fail the, you know, blah, 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 the underserved. And advocates report that it is difficult to identify the content that students are learning in Virginia because schools are not required to report what curriculum they implement if they choose to teach sex education. Okay? Just to let you know. If you want to find out, look and see what the lunatics are pissed about. Okay? They'll tell you right there. Since Virginia schools are not required to provide sex ed, because they're talking about sex ed. This is different than family life. Family life is abstinence education, which is very important to understand. They're talking about comprehensive sex ed, which I'm going to get into later. It's disturbing. But don't forget, the health standards of learning. Ask yourself, why is CASEL in the health standards of learning? Okay. Then I would encourage you to read the family life standards of learning. I would encourage you to read the social emotional learning standards of learning. And then go to the history standards of learning. And Governor Youngkin tells you right there how the standards to curriculum to school board to locality process works. And then ask your school board what in the HE double hockey sticks they're doing, because obviously nobody has any clue. And that's why everybody is Rogue Nation here. And if I have to scorch earth policy, burn it down myself until my dying day, I will, because I refuse to leave this conundrum to my children to deal with. And every parent, I would encourage you to get a little bit of rage or a little bit of what I deal with every single day inside of you, because if not, our children are doomed, not just in school, but what you're going to leave this world to be. So with that, I'm out. Peace out, guys. See y'all tomorrow.